I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, I don't know about you, but the sequence of events of Groundhog's Day to Super Bowl Sunday, and then March Madness and the Masters, always for me makes me want spring. And thinking about spring over the next several videos, I'm going to be putting together my ideas about March, April, and May. And we're going to start today by talking about this La Nina. And we're going to focus on something called the Southern Oscillation Index. It's a comparison between pressure anomalies in Tahiti to Darwin. Now, we have a long history of the Southern Oscillation Index behavior, and we can look at that to try to draw on some analog years. What has it been doing lately? Well, look over here on the right with me. Through 2019 and then into 2020 at the beginning of 2021, the values have been increasing. Now remember, positive values of the Southern Oscillation Index generally tell us we have strong trade winds and therefore La Nina conditions. When the trade winds are slackened or weakened, these values go down, okay? And we saw that happen throughout 2014 into 2015 and 16 right here. That was the last big El Nino event that we had. Now, when I look historically, a couple of events stick out to me. We saw a major buildup in 2010 into 2011 of the Southern Oscillation Index values. That was our last big La Nina event. But look right in through here. 2007 into 2008. Do you see how what we've got here looks very similar to what I've got over here in 2020 to 2021? But even trying to use this time period as a good analog to this one, other components of the atmosphere don't look the same at all. And I'm struggling looking back over the last 50 years of data to find a good analog to what's happening right now with our La Nina. It's fading. It likely reached a peak right here around, well, the second week of January. And the values for the Southern Oscillation Index have come down from around 20, now down to around 13. Still very positive, still well above the threshold that's needed to be a La Nina, which means this La Nina will be here but fading through March and April. Now, if we have positive Southern Oscillation Index values in March, it tends to favor warmer conditions across the southern tier of the United States. We tend to be colder in the northwest, and there tends to be quite a bit of cold air that comes out of the Canadian prairie toward the northeast. But remember, this Southern Oscillation Index value is crashing. It's dropping off. And thinking about that, remember, we still have plenty of cool water in Union Region 3 and 4. Still have some stronger trade winds out of the east there. But there's a warming signal over by South America. And note the warmer water that is in place here with the cooler water that's still tucked along the coast of North America. You see, these are the features that make this particular year so unique and difficult to find an analog to. But I'll say this, with the momentum in the atmosphere building, we're losing that La Nina-like signal, and the trade winds, which are denoted here in blue, are beginning to fade a little bit. Now, why bring all of this up? I think if the La Nina begins to fade, other pieces begin to take over and become the more dominant signal. Could it be the MJO? It certainly could be. It's finally beginning to break away from the maritime continent side of this diagram, getting over here, now into phase 7, maybe curling into phase 8, and starting to make its normal eastward progression. Again, the point behind me saying this is that with the La Nina fading, we could start to see other factors really influencing our spring pattern. Now, it's always instructive just to look at the last year. So this was mid-March 2020. No El Nino or La Nina signal to take note of, but you can see the cooler water along the west coast. Now, that was an early spring indicator that we did need to be watching out for drought in the central and western part of the United States. Really, though, looking out here in parts of the plains getting to the western Corn Belt. But that was just one piece to all of this. March, though, of 2020 really favored warm conditions from Texas through the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Remember, getting into April and even May, we had a pretty fast plant in parts of the Corn Belt. We had the Miracle March type setup hitting California with that strong subtropical jet stream, but the Canadian prairie stayed over cold throughout much of March and early April and even into early May last year. So with that as the backdrop, what is this spring looking like from the latest model updates? March, April, May. We continue to see cooler water here. I've been talking recently about how I want to pay attention to that due to its correlation with potentially warm, even hot and dry conditions in the Midwestern part of the United States. But this is what's unique. See the warm water here, the warm water there? Despite our La Nina fading, these two factors here, I'll put an X in it over there, could be the dominating factors for determining where the spring and summer ridging is going to be. But with all of that, notice this. The latest temperature anomalies for March seem to be unfazed by the cold air that is currently in place. And we continue to see a warm corridor in through here, warmer than normal for this particular March, with the coldest air in the western part of the United States. This is what the precipitation pattern looks like as well. While we don't see the major, above average anomalies for Southern California, to see the wetter conditions across the west and northwest means we're going to continue to build up that snowpack like we need to. There are indications of an active Alberta Clipper storm track through the Great Lakes. Same thing coming out of the Ohio River Valley. But drier in parts of the southern high plains, drier in parts of the southeast, despite the fact that over the next week or so, we are not going to be dry in this area. We need to watch this very carefully moving forward because it will be the thing against which we measure the upcoming forecasts here in the near term. But what I'm most concerned about comes back to this map. Latest Drought Monitor update, we didn't see much change. There was some class improvement in the west. You saw that in California. But I'll be most concerned to see if drought continues to develop or does develop here in the southern plains, if it develops over the southeast in through spring. And once we get into spring, our spring rain is going to start to erase the drought in the northern plains up toward the Red River Valley. That is an area that will be critically watched because this is an area that's been in snow drought this winter and the soils are very, very cold, as you're going to see here in just a few minutes. So not much of a hope of return of moisture in this area anytime soon. You can see those cold temperatures, wind chill advisories, wind chill warnings in the northern plains, upslope flow here in the northern Rockies of Montana producing a lot of snow. And we're going to watch this corridor carefully moving into the northeast for our most active wintertime precipitation. Now, speaking of wintertime precipitation, here was at least what we had over the weekend. A lot of lake effect snow, a snowy corridor from eastern Tennessee, northern Alabama, northern Georgia, cutting into north and South Carolina, and then pushing through parts of the mid-Atlantic here into the northeast, where you see we had a few inches of accumulation. But this is going to be the area I'm going to watch most carefully, and there is potential for some bigger snows to set up right in through this area. Total precip over the last 3 days, we had quite a bit of wet weather that did come into the southeast. And that's going to be an area that over the next week is going to continue to favor wet conditions. This is liquid only, so this is the next 7 days looking at total accumulated precipitation. I'll show you the snow map in a few moments. But as you notice, quite a lot of precipitation down here, 1 inch to 2+ inches of rainfall coming through the lower Mississippi River Valley over toward the southeast. Our snow corridor, again, is going to be in through here. And there's a system I'm watching late in the week this week that does start to return some moisture to the northwest. But maybe it's more instructive to look at this map in terms of anomalies. So this is what we see. Better snows in the Intermountain West, in the Cascades, but not in the Sierra Nevada, the Klamath Mountains, or the rest of California, compared to normal here. Our snow drought will continue in the northern plains, getting up into parts of the Canadian Prairie, but very wet compared to normal in through this area. So to see this unfold, let's go look at the high-resolution NAM model first. And we're just going to play this out over the next 60 hours. A couple of things that I want you to watch with me. You're going to see light snow showers moving through this area repeatedly throughout this week. Okay, starts there on Monday and Tuesday, and they're going to show up again middle of the week. This area in through here is going to have some overrunning. What that means is the warm air overruns the very shallow but extremely cold air mass that is tucking its way into the central United States throughout this week. And therefore, we're going to watch this area carefully for the potential for some freezing rain and maybe some sleet or freezing drizzle. That's going to then move toward the end of the week over toward parts of the mid-Atlantic toward New England. But if we watch it one more time, this is how things pan out through Monday, now getting into Tuesday, and then the beginning of Wednesday. From there, let's let the European model take over. Let's watch up to what we've seen so far, which is right about here, Wednesday morning. So again, pay attention to this corridor as seeing where we could possibly get some midweek freezing rain with those scattered snow showers to the north. So as we play this now through Wednesday afternoon and evening, getting into Thursday morning, you can really see it now, right in through this area. I'm concerned about some cold air damming along the Appalachian Mountains, but there could be enough cold air in place that Virginia, West Virginia, Northern Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, this is going to be an area that's going to be getting cold enough to just be all snow. Same thing with the snow showers through the Ohio River Valley here into Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, and then back into parts of the plains as well. But just play this forward. Watch those pinks. That's an area that I'm concerned about Thursday afternoon and evening, now getting into Friday morning as to having the greatest risk for freezing rain. Now you see that through Friday morning, the rain moves through the southeast. The colder air is making its next big push into the central part of the United States, scattered snow showers and a lot of lake effect snow. But here's the system toward the end of the week that hits the west, bringing in rain for much of Northern California and some bigger snows in the Intermountain West. You'll see that as I go forward into the weekend. Now, as we get in through the weekend, and the coldest air sets up, well, I'll just take you to Sunday morning on Valentine's Day. Right there, 1050 high sitting in the midsection of the country. With that high pressure cell in place, clear skies, light winds, but look at around it. You can see strong winds. We have snow showers here in the mid-Atlantic and no big coastal system like I was worried about last week. Now that's a critical piece. We were very concerned last week watching the model runs that this wave way out here in the Pacific was going to cut through Mexico and then pull right up toward Louisiana. The latest forecast fade and flatten that wave and shove it south, and now we're no longer concerned on the 12th, 13th, and 14th of a big coastal low that had the potential for spreading snow pretty far to the south. What we see now is going into the weekend, the snow will be here in the mid-Atlantic, big high pressure, very cold air in place here, and snow in the Intermountain West. Now something to watch for next week, but there's too much uncertainty to nail this down. This feature will eject into the Central Plains, and it could become a low that takes off here using that cold air to produce a big snowstorm early next week. But I don't have the details down enough to tell you what that's going to look like, and the ensembles don't support it too well either. So looking at ice accumulation only, what we notice is that that area I'm watching carefully here, and then the cold air damming along the Appalachian Mountains seems to be the broad sector through this week we're going to watch for ice. Notice here in the I-5 corridor near the Willamette Valley, there's some potential for some ice as well. From there, let's take a look at the operational European model on snow. You can see that there's going to be a tough line dividing right here over in the mid-Atlantic, where north of that, the potential this week for quite a bit of accumulating snow here, better than 6 inches, does exist. But as I pointed out, that's our snow corridor here throughout this week on the eastern side of the Rockies. We continue to stay in snow drought in the northern plains, parts of the upper Midwest, getting into the Canadian prairie. But that system coming in at the end of the week, notice here, northern Rockies, Payette National Forest, for example, getting into the Sawtooth, the Blue Mountains, and then along the Cascades, adding in several more inches. But California, the Sierra Nevada, not nearly as big of a snowfall event. Probability of getting at least 3 inches of snow through the next 10 days is shown here. So just take a moment, pause the video, and look at it. Because what I then want to show you is what is the probability of getting at least 6 inches. So that's why I identified that corridor, getting into the mid-Atlantic toward the northeast, as having the greatest chances of picking up some accumulating snow through our next 10 days, with that system coming in at the end of the week really piling it up here in the mountains of the west. Okay, from there, by day 10, the jet stream pattern has really linked up the tropospheric polar vortex with the stratospheric polar vortex, which means our next 15 days are dominated by cold air outbreaks in this section of the country. The jet stream pattern, though, is avoiding California. Can you see it? It's blocked. And everything comes together up the East Coast. So what this gives us is wet in the northwest, California dry, no strong subtropical component, but this will be the active corridor where we expect to see multiple storm systems kind of pulling through the Ohio River Valley, through parts of, like I said, the southeast into the mid-Atlantic and then to the northeast. That is your week 2 precipitation pattern as seen by the European model. From there, let's talk temperatures. Early this morning, we were watching very cold air in the northern plains and Canadian prairie. Temperatures in Fahrenheit here down around 20 degrees below normal. Now, the National Weather Service out of Duluth had a good time with this yesterday, putting out a pair of pants here which were wet and they just kind of froze in place. But we're going to be dealing with that cold air throughout much of this week. Are you ready? Monday's high temperatures compared to normal. Watch the cold air move south. There's Tuesday's high temperatures. That's the black numbers there. Let's get into Wednesday. Sorry for the flip-flop there. There's Wednesday. Now we go to Thursday. Friday. This is high temperatures on Friday. And as we get into the Valentine's Day weekend, there's Saturday and Sunday. I think Sunday is going to be the greatest extent of the cold air. But believe it or not, we start to see some moderation happening here with those temperatures back into the single digits in the northern plains. From there, days 5 through 10 seem to be the coldest time period, as you can see here from the European on the right and the GFS on the left. And at that time period, we expect to get our farthest south progression of the freezing line with those 4-inch soil temperatures. I just kind of outlined it for us there. We could get that into Texas, northern Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, with much colder up here in parts of the western Corn Belt, getting into the plains in the Canadian Prairie with those temperatures down there well below 0 Fahrenheit. But by days 10 through 15, the models are starting to signal some moderation of this cold air mass, especially the European model over here on the right, meaning that we got to endure this for at least the next 10 to 15 days, but there are indications that the stratospheric polar vortex is going to start to go back over the North Pole, which is what we can see in the increase of the zonal winds here. But will it take the tropospheric polar vortex with it? The European weeklies getting to the end of this month and the beginning of March suggests that the coldest air not retreats but almost fades, sticks around through parts of the Canadian Prairie back toward Alaska. And there are some hints of a buildup of a subtropical ridge. And therefore, by the end of the month of February, getting into March, maybe return toward normal, even warmer than normal, especially down here in the south. Precipitation. The models are very reluctant to bring in moisture to California through the end of February. I mean, significant, meaningful moisture. You can see that the Pacific Northwest, through the Great Lakes and possibly the Ohio River Valley, still see an active storm track, but we have pretty weak signal here in terms of precipitation patterns overall. To finish this up, March. This is now getting to the middle and end of March. I'm going to watch carefully to see if some sort of subtropical ridge develops. The models are behaving almost very La Nina-like, keeping the coldest air and troughing over this region. What I want to see change is in the upper levels of the atmosphere. I'd like to see better southwest flow that could hit California for the month of March, and with that, return better moisture here through the Four Corner States in the northern plains. There are some early indications of that at the end of March, but at this point, it's too far out to pin down. But I'll watch it carefully, and I will report back to you as we continue to build our ideas for spring. Thank you for your attention. Look forward to talking again later this week. Have a good one.